What does it take to create a niche podcast that connects and resonates with a really specific audience? That's what I'm going to discuss today by shining a spotlight on my good friend, Mr. Steve Lazarus from the podcast Your London Legacy. This is the Podcast Accelerator. I'm your host, that bloody British podcast guy, Mark Asquith, CEO and co-founder here at Rebel Base Media, the podcast company that builds podcasting tools such as podcast websites, Productivity, where we teach podcasting, how to grow your audience via the Podcast Success Academy, and where we provide world-class, the finest in class, in my opinion, podcast hosting, analytics, and marketing tools with Captivate.fm, where you can host multiple shows and access infinite data. You can access infinite tools. You can just make your life easier as a podcaster by signing up for your 7-day free trial at Captivate.fm. Go and check it out. Now, as we approach International Podcast Day, I'm spending the next week or so highlighting independent podcasters who I feel are doing a great job of building a brand around their voice. And first up today is Steve Lazarus from Your London Legacy. Now, before I get to Steve, just a quick reminder that AWeber, they're going to give you 90 days free of their email marketing platform. I was talking to the team over there this week. We're going to be changing this up. So this 90-day trial is only available now for a limited time. You have to be email marketing to your audience. You really, really do. I truly believe that is one of the core relationship pieces of your podcast, all right? So please go and check AWeber out on that limited edition trial now. This trial is going away, okay? 90 days completely for free at markasquith.com/AWeber. So, a couple of years ago, I was able to see a friend of mine, who's now a great friend of mine, join up to a couple of our services. And I got an email saying, look, I'm looking for a little bit of podcast mentoring, a little bit of podcast coaching. And that person was Mr. Steve Lazarus, one of the most charming, thoughtful, and just all-around genuine guys that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And we've worked together now for a couple of years. He's one of my very limited edition sort of Podcast Accelerator coaching clients. I don't open seats up for that very, very often, but Steve has been with me for a couple of years now. And Steve first came to me and said, I want to start a podcast for my claims business, which is an insurance-based business. So we kind of threw it around a little bit, and honestly, things just weren't fitting. They weren't clicking. Steve wasn't passionate about this. So we got talking about actually why he wanted to do it. And it really was just building a podcast was a way of firing Steve back up. I'm always a fan of side projects. Like, I'm often working on an evening on various side projects, usually related to Captivate or podcast websites or something. And Steve was the same, where he wanted something to work on that reinvigorated his willpower, that brought his fire back. And we started to talk about what he was really passionate about. And what he loves is London. He lives in London, born and bred in London, and he just knows the city so very well. And thus, we came up with Your London Legacy. Now, I can't take any credit for this. This is all on Steve, okay? Developed the idea of Your London Legacy, telling the timeless stories of London's hidden personalities. It's amazing. I love the little strapline, I love the little tagline. The timeless stories of London's hidden personalities. And since he launched last June, Steve has been just on this whirlwind roller coaster ride where he has now set up a Patreon. He's got his first patron just the last couple of weeks, so well done on that, buddy. And Steve has got just an amazing outlet. He's brought some fantastic people on, and the idea with this is that he tells the stories, the timeless stories of the people from London that you wouldn't ordinarily know. It's this like hidden layer of London. It's fantastic. And Steve is over at Your London Legacy on all the social channels, so please go and check it out. Go and subscribe. I'm actually going to drop, when I finish this conversation, I'm going to drop Steve's trailer into my feed. So you'll see here as a bonus episode, in your podcast player of choice, there will be a bonus episode, which is Steve Lazarus's Your London Legacy trailer. Now, what Steve does so well that I want you to learn from is he is a natural storyteller. When you listen to his interviews, he really dove in. He bought the Zoom recording equipment. I think he's got a Zoom H4. He bought the couple of microphones that I recommended. He goes out. He will literally get in his car, jump on the tube, and go out to interview these people. But what we've developed with Your London Legacy is a narrative. So Steve's got this amazing intro music, and he builds, at the beginning of every episode, he builds a narrative tale. He hooks you in the first minute or two. It's fantastic fantastic quality work. It really is good. Now, it's not expensive production value. Steve doesn't spend a lot of money doing this, but he does invest where it counts. So he does edit the show. He gets that edited by a wonderful friend of mine, John Bakinas. And it just works. It's a fantastically well put together platform. Now, the lessons that I want you to learn from Steve Lazarus are that put story first, okay? Put story first is always going to give you what you need. Connect with your listeners. Walk the beat. Steve goes out and he will walk the beat. He goes and sees Lal Hardy in his tattoo parlor. He goes and sees this person, that person. He goes and sees the people that are making a difference. And he's very humble, he's very genuine, and he's a natural storyteller. So go ahead and study what Steve Lazarus does. Now, if you want a recommendation for an episode, check out the trailer, which I've dropped right here in my feed. But if you want an episode recommendation, I highly, highly, highly recommend the episode with Lal Hardy, who is a tattooist to the stars, all right? It's a fascinating episode, and Steve, again, just weaves a wonderful narrative, but he's such a natural performer. He's such a natural conversationalist, all right? So Steve was made for podcasting. Please, please, please go and check it out. I feel you can learn from this. Now, coming up this week, we also have a spotlight on another great friend of mine, Cam Capriotto from Remarkable Results. Then on Monday, it's International Podcast Day. We're going to be going all out, and I'm going to be celebrating 5 years of podcasting. I launched Excellence Expected, my first ever personally branded podcast, on International Podcast Day 2014. Yes, I had a podcast before that with my great friend Gary Aylett, with whom I run Spark of Rebellion, but my first ever solo venture, the day that Rebel Base Media and the products that we create was born, was International Podcast Day 5 years ago. So I'm going to be giving you a retrospective on that, telling you the lessons that I've learned over the coming weeks. On the 7th of October, that's where I'm going to be diving deep into the 3 lessons that I've learned from producing over 1,100 episodes. On International Podcast Day itself, I'm going to be going ahead and I'm just going to be dropping my first ever podcast episode into my feed as a bonus episode. You'll be able to hear how robotic I am. It was an episode 0. Remember when that advice was still out there? Now we've got podcast trailers. We've got a lot more that we can do. But I'm going to drop my original episode 0. Excellence Expected was my interview series. I interviewed over 150 guests, and just go and listen to how robotic I was. That's coming on Monday. Like I said, this week on Friday, we've got Cam Capriotto and a trailer for Remarkable Results, which I think is just making waves. And I'm going to be talking about the power of niching when it comes to Cam's episode. The week commencing International Podcast Day, the 2nd of October, I've got a spotlight on Gary Aylett, who runs Spark of Rebellion with me. But he also runs the UK's foremost Doctor Who podcast. And I'm going to be talking about the power of a pop culture niche and the power of a pop culture society. And then we've got coming up someone that I think is making a difference in people's lives and affecting people's mental health and consciousness of mental health. It's my great friend on the 4th of October, Rick Clemens from 40 Plus Real Men and Life Uncloseted. And I'm going to be talking about the power of being raw and real in your audio. So, got an exciting couple of weeks coming up here on the Podcast Accelerator. I'm really looking forward to it. Go and check out Steve Lazarus's Your London Legacy trailer. Go and check out the episode with Lal Hardy, which I think is absolutely wonderful. It's a masterclass in how guys like you and me, who aren't professional interviewers, can generate amazing content through inquisitive storytelling. So please go and check that out. And until the next time, thanks for joining me here. Go and check out Captivate.fm for your 7-day free trial of the world's best podcast hosting platform. And thank you as ever. Tell someone that you think would benefit from this show about it. And until the next time, never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.